Chuck Todd, I mean, presidents have famously fallen out with the media over the years. I can't think of a single president who hasn't at some stage. But to call the media that criticizes a president the enemy, to attack anonymous sources, and then to exclude them, perhaps only once, we don't know, from White House gaggles and briefings, that is a first, isn't it?
It is sort of an escalation here, but I think you have to understand what the president did. You actually need to understand what his chief strategist, Steve Bannon, said just the day before in front of the same crowd when he outlined and he once again reaffirmed the idea that the media was the opposition party, that that's what this White House believes. That's number one. Number two, that he said it's going to be a fight every day, that they're the corporatist, globalist media, and they're going to fight everything that the president wants to do every day. But you also need to realize the timing of this specific tirade, Matt, which is, and we've sort of identified this pattern. Whenever there is a troubling update, troubling news story on Russia and the allegations of their interference in the election and possible coordination with the Trump campaign, when a story hits, within 24 to 36 hours, the escalation of media attacks goes up. And this is just the latest. And this came literally 24 hours after news surfaced. That's right. 24 hours, Matt, after news surfaced that the White House chief of staff may have had improper contact with the FBI about the investigation.
And is there another tactic here, which is that every time he says something about the media or summon the media, and there's a howl of outrage from the people that he's attacking,
right,
it sort of affirms his brand to his base, to the people who voted for him, to the people that he still likes to talk to at these rallies?
Absolutely. Look, media bashing, it's great for his base. If you think of his base as about 35 to 40%, his true core supporters, that may even be a little high, but that 30 to 35%, they love it, they eat it up. So there's that. But there's another part of this. You know, it's not just the media, it's not the only, any institution that they believe is getting in the way of their agenda, they're going after. So in this case, the media, Russia's a distraction that keeps them from doing their agenda. But look at, just this morning we have news that the potential travel ban that the president may reinstate in the 7 countries that I identified, our Department of Homeland Security, their intelligence agency said, you know, you cannot identify a threat, a potential terrorist threat based on anything from these 7 countries. So they sort of poo-pooed the sense of urgency on it. And the president essentially said, bad intelligence, I'm dismissing it. They need to do better research. So this is all part of if an institution, whether in the government or outside the government, contradicts, then they go after and try to undermine the credibility of that institution.
Now, in a democracy, those people are called opponents and they're engaged and perhaps persuaded. In a dictatorship, they're called the enemy and they are isolated and crushed. I'm not for 1 minute suggesting that America is a dictatorship, but the language used by Trump and what you have just described in your last answer, that is alarming, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Well, this is what's troubling to sort of the folks that I think believe they're part of the guardrails of American democracy. That's what I've been telling people. Look, we have guardrails. They can get dented up every once in a while. You know, when we see politicians sort of veer or other institutions veer, and they'll dent up a guardrail, but they're there. And certainly the language, the tone. Look, there's Republicans on Capitol Hill, congressional Republicans, uncomfortable with this constant sort of war like rhetoric that this White House wants to use with the press, that over time it's self-defeating. And look, in my experience, 25 years now covering American politics, anytime I've seen a candidate try to ban a news outlet or try to take on a media organization, while it may help them short term, it's usually a problem long term.
Does Trump have a point in the sense that he is getting a less fair shake than Obama did, that the press is just far more critical of him than of his predecessor?
I think that this is a relationship that is just in a really, really bad place. So on one hand, Trump says, I'm only getting bad press. And if you look at it, he's getting a lot of bad press. But is he getting it because the press has decided to give him bad press? Or has he not done anything to sort of prevent the bad press? This is a government that has been extraordinarily slow to get started. They've done a terrible job of vetting people that they've hired, and so it's made the process of filling out the government take even longer. It was a sloppy rollout of the travel ban. They've been unable to answer questions on Russia. And I think, look, I still think that a lot of this has to do with the initial way that the president took office. Here you get elected in a very divisive election where you have a split decision, if you will. The popular vote went one way, but the Electoral College went the other. And he never acknowledged that. He's instead challenged the idea that he somehow got that a majority of the country did not vote for him. And I think that lack of outreach has only stoked the fires a little bit. So it's just created this hyper combative atmosphere. And so is the press negative to be negative sake, or is it the White House bringing on this negative? You know, it's a chicken and egg. The relationship's in a very, very bad place. Let's just put it that way.
Now, this exclusion yesterday from what they call the White House gaggle, the briefing by Sean Spicer, not the main one, but the unofficial one, do you think that could become a permanent thing? And if it does, would you perhaps be prepared to boycott it yourself?
Look, I think that every news organization is trying to figure out what is in the best interest of viewers, what is in the best interest of readers, and what is in the best interest of protecting the First Amendment and our Constitution and freedom of the press and press access. And so, look, I think I look at what we all did about 10 years ago. The Obama administration wanted to exclude Fox News out of a Treasury briefing at the time. It wasn't a big thing, but the four networks, the four of us stood together and said, well, we're not going to participate if you block Fox. And that the Obama White House relented. I think that it can be effective when you act together. At the same time, Matt, I am mindful that I don't want to be a political prop. I don't want to be a political actor here. This White House wants us to act in a collusion type way. It feeds it. They would love to use that as a political tool. So I have to say, Matt, all of that is in my head when somebody asks me a question about boycotts.
So they're setting you a trap.
Because we're fighting the idea. That's right. We're fighting the idea of censorship. So at the same time, do we self-censor, right? So this isn't as easy of an answer as it might seem when you present it.
And it's interesting that throughout the campaign, and I was over there quite a lot last year, the shaming of the press, and it was really the shaming of the press, was a feature of every single rally. 10 minutes in, roughly 10 minutes in, President Trump would turn to the pen where we were all sitting like Christians in the Colosseum, and he'd say, those people are disgusting and they're dishonest.
The press was part of the show, Matt. I mean, I'm glad you just described it perfectly by calling it by comparing it to as if we were in the Colosseum, because remember where they would put the press? They put them in the middle, so that there was all of a sudden the boos. It was almost like the press was surrounded, right? And the catcalls would come. Look, this has been part of his strategy. It's been part of of rallying the base. I think, look, I've been through the campaign tactic to beat up the press during the campaign. What has been different about this is that the campaign hasn't ended, right? The White House hasn't ended that campaign. What we assumed was just your typical campaign tactic that maybe is getting a little overheated is now part of their agenda, it looks like at times in this White House. So, look, at some point, I don't think this is going to be sustainable for the president. He's a guy at the end of the day that loves the media. He bashes the media, but he's upset because he craves the attention and he craves the media judgments if they can become positive, right? He wants to browbeat people. So at some point, if it's all-out war, he's not going to like that either, and he's going to try to fix it himself somehow and blame staff. When that point comes, I don't know, but I have a feeling that point will be coming.
And he's watching you all a lot. He watches an awful lot of television. But one other thing is that if we are constantly talking about his war against the media and vice versa, it also becomes easy to be distracted from, to ignore the real scandals that might be out there.
And that's why I thought it was important when you said, well, what about standing and doing the boycott? I would say that I think that they're, again, and I go back to the pattern here, these media tirades are, I don't think it's a coincidence that these media tirades are escalated when there is new allegations involving the Russia story. So at the end of the day, I think as a journalist, you keep your eye on the ball.
The White House Correspondents' Dinner, the annual kind of ritual of, kiss and make up and eat some rubber chicken and drink lots of bad wine, I think in April or May. Should that be boycotted? I mean, should he turn up? Is he going to turn up?
Look, I don't think this is a fundraiser for scholarships for kids, for students. I don't want to see that go away. I don't think this is a laughing matter. I don't think it's a time to be toasting and joking. But look, the White House Correspondents Association could use that dinner to honor journalists around the world who are struggling for press freedom. Journalists in Turkey, journalists in Russia, journalists in the Philippines, journalists in a lot of fledgling sort of semi-one-time free places bordering on authoritarianism, as for instance, as we're seeing in those 3 countries. I think there's a lot of things that you can do with that dinner. It doesn't have to be a comedy show. It doesn't have to be some sort of party. It can have a serious focus. So I think the organizers are thinking about a lot of things on that front, Matt.
Chuck Todd, thank you very much indeed.